Welcome. This is episode 56 of Property Avenue WA. Tonight, what a weekend in WA. It's a long weekend, home sales, golf in the regions, and leisure down south. So tonight will be a little bit different to the norm, where we will obviously talk about property, but it's all about WA. It's been a long weekend, so we thought that what a good way to have a little bit of chin wag. Really, it's a bit of a cover up because we're not as organised as we like to be. So it's a little bit leisurely tonight, but why not? It's a long weekend. We're coming off a fantastic weather-wise, what we had. I'm Tony Viner. He's Oscar D'Souza, and Property Avenue WA the focus is all WA, and that's what it's all about when it comes to property. Tonight we're going to, obviously, we always enjoy Oscar's stats where we have a bit of a review about the rental and the sales market. We'll chat about the WA long weekend. What did we find out? What did we see? What did we do? People we spoke to. There's been lots of articles of interest that we might touch on and give our thoughts and opinions. Discovering the answers to your property questions. If you've got some property questions, we would love you to send those through. Because it's been such a bit of a busy week, I don't have many questions at all, but hopefully some of you that may be listening or watching would send through some questions and we will discover the answers to those. Last week we did Shittiest Town Award. We saw an article where it referred to the Shittiest Town Award. Well, something has been brought to my attention that has gone one step further, and I'll let Oscar introduce that when we get to that point. Property headlines in all parts. There's lots of different headlines being out and about, and not just in WA, so we thought we might just touch on those. And have we got a great if question for you. So that's what we're planning on doing tonight. And tomorrow, remember, our podcast, if it's not the vision that you want to enjoy, then we've got our podcast available tomorrow, probably around about lunchtime, I reckon. It'll be available. So that'll be uploaded and you'll be able to get that through all the different avenues that you would normally find your podcast. But before we do that, I should refer to our disclaimer for those that, obviously, if you're watching the show, you'll be able to see it. But those that are on the podcast, the general advice disclaimer, the information on this podcast is to be regarded as general advice. Your personal objectives, needs and financial circumstances were not taken into account when preparing this content. I did it again. I can't believe it.
Oh, you're hilarious.
Oh, I've been so good for the last couple of weeks. We always advise and recommend you seek personal, professional and financial advice tailored to your specific individual needs before making financial, property and investment decisions. And only today I've had two people contact me for some direction, both different circumstances, and both I had to direct them to specific advice to attend for their individual needs. So it works all the time and it's really, really important. So don't take this as just, it's very general, but when it comes to your personal position and what you want to do, then ensure, whether it be your accountant, your real estate agent, your property advisor, your settlement agent, your property manager, then ensure that you speak to that person to cater for your needs. OD, welcome, mate. Great to see you. Good to hear from you. Great weekend had by all.
Absolutely, it was. Tony Viner, good evening to you. Good evening to viewers and obviously our listeners as well. I've had an absolutely fabulous week. I guess I've had a fabulous weekend as well, which we'll jump into shortly. But in particular, and you touched on it earlier, it is a little bit more of a laid back or maybe a bit more of a conversational episode today, which I think is pretty much in line with our style, even though we are going to cover some of the headlines. But in particular, we've probably got time, I guess, for a bit of input from viewers, if viewers or listeners, well, more so the viewers, I guess, if they've got any questions, if they want to let us know what they did over the long weekend to celebrate WA Day, just a bit of input from those listening, I think would be absolutely fabulous, and I think that will really complement tonight's show. But mate, I'm excited for a few reasons, and one in particular is, as I showed you before, and I'll show you right now, I got myself a little microphone. Because I think you've been on my back about how bad my sound is from my trusty laptop. So I've gone out, spent big bucks by the way, on my microphone.
Thousands.
And maybe I'll come through loud and clear tonight. But anyway, great to be here, and I look forward to the next 45 minutes.
Yeah, and I'm very, very impressed with you that you've done that, because it's not so much an issue for the vision, But now that we do a
I wouldn't have thought
podcast,
so. No, not a microphone.
I had people. Well, people still like to be able to hear you, even though there's vision. But I've had people that have asked, and our producer, who looks after our podcast, said, "Do you think you could sort out that sound? Because it's very, very important when it comes to a podcast." So,
Sure.
fantastic! I can't believe. So, are you sending me the invoice for that? Is that something that we'll have to get out of the bank account for Property Avenue WA?
Are you saying that you have not yet received and processed the invoice?
No, haven't got any income yet. So, what the weekend? How was your weekend? Where did you head in? I came up to Geelong and did a golfing thing. What did you do?
Mate, I went the other way. I actually headed down south to a lovely, gorgeous spot just on the just inside of Bunbury or inland from Bunbury, known as Ferguson Valley. I will try not to go on about it too much, TV, but I feel amazing. I feel refreshed, and I mentioned to you off air, particularly for us blokes, that old thing where we talk about nature is good for the soul. For me, always as a bloke and as a tough guy, it's always a little bit of hocus pocus, and it's like, what does that even mean? I've just come back from 3 days of been in the Ferguson Valley, where it is 100% about nature. Some of the most beautiful nature I think I've ever seen, and I think you grabbed an image for me from me just before of a photo, an unedited photo that we took when I was up on the top of one of the hills. And far out, mate, I've got a renewed respect for nature being good for the soul, because we don't need devices, we don't need lots of alcohol, or we don't need to be out at lunch or anything like that. But just to be amongst nature is, from my point of view, it's just so underrated. And yeah, it's gone way up on my scale, mate. So I've had 2.5 or 3 days of that, and I feel $1,000,000.
So, for people that wouldn't know any different, so tell me about Ferguson Valley property wise. What's it like? Is it a town site? Is it got a village? Is it what is it? What's the industry?
Probably the most. It's basically farming and lifestyle.
Yep.
To some extent, it's a mini Margaret River in terms of the fact that it's got a few breweries. There's a few vineyards and wineries that are through there as well. Nowhere near as big, obviously. But it's very, very green. It's far hillier. Like there's hills and plains everywhere through the Ferguson Valley, and that's obviously something that Margaret River really doesn't have, or anywhere near as much. The closest town site, as far as I'm aware, is a town by the name of Dardanup. And that's very much like I think it's like a cattle town. So, and in fact, you'll see it in our supermarkets. I think is it Dardanup Butcher or Dardanup Beef, basically.
Yep.
So, that's something on our IGA shop shelves. And also, TV, I'd mention the Dardanup Bakery. You know how, the Dunsborough Bakery is almost world famous, and there's a few of those bakeries around our state. The Dardanup Bakery certainly also has that sort of a reputation, and I went there each day that I've stayed there over the weekend, and far out, mate, it is, it's not overinflated for the sake of it. They do a fantastic job where people well out of Dardanup or well out of Ferguson Valley actually travel into the valley and into Dardanup just to go to this bakery, and they produce all the morning baked goodies, mate. It's worth the trip.
So what you talk about breweries, craft breweries? What's the brand down there? What's the brewery that I need to look out for? What's the brand?
There's a couple. One's called the Wild Bull Brewery, and yeah, they do their own brewing on site. And what's the other one called? Oh,
that's okay. You'll think
Bush
of
Shack.
it.
I think it's called the Bush Shack Brewery or something as well. So and there's probably. Yeah,
Yep.
There's probably a couple more as well.
Yep.
But then there's a few wineries as well. One's called St. Aidan's. There's another one called Hackersley So there's a handful of wineries as well. Ferguson Valley is the sort of place, TV, that where a lot of people, of course, haven't heard it, but when
No.
they do go there, and I really encourage you to go. When they do go there, they come back singing the praises of this place, and it's not hard to see why. So, and it's only 2 hours. It's about 2 hours drive from Perth.
Now, you were a little bit spoiled because you were looking after Sister's place, but if
Yeah.
it was someone like me, and perhaps those that are listening or watching, and they wanted to go there, what's the accommodation? Is there a good
Plenty.
choice of accommodation?
Yeah, there's lots of B&Bs, there's lots of farm stays as well, and because a lot of people down there, a lot of people down there are retired, so they've retired out of their normal full-time vacation, but they've got acreage down there, so they'll either do bed and breakfasts, or they'll have like little farm stays and everything. So it's not difficult to find. It's pretty easy to find accommodation down there. It's very laid back, very, very relaxed. But it's one hell of an experience all the same. So I'm very excited about it because I only got back from it from yesterday. But such a stunning place, and particularly now through winter when those heavy rains have been through and everything is just stunningly green. Really, really well worth the trip.
And if you were going this time of the year, obviously you need to take your woolies, I would guess.
Definitely, but that's part of the experience as well. You want to be down there. You want it to be that really crisp, not too cold, but certainly pretty crisp at night and early in the morning. Take your beanie, take your best woolly jumper sort of thing. But then you're going to be surrounded by a log fire and maybe a cheeky glass of red as well. So it's a beautiful, beautiful spot, and I encourage everyone to get down there. The Dardanup residents and Ferguson Valley people are probably going to hate me saying that because they want their little bit of paradise protected. But by the same token, there is a bit of tourism side to it as well. So I'm sure they won't be too angry with me.
Our regular follower Simon has just said hello, and he's on board. So he might be interested in the Ferguson Valley. There you go, Simon.
Yeah.
Ferguson Valley, little place to go and have a visit.
Yeah,
so,
definitely.
Is real estate a big thing down there, or is that not necessarily the case because it's more farming, is it?
Well, it's less farming and it's more lifestyle. There's a little bit of farming thrown in there, but it's not dominated by farms. It's a bit more lifestyle where people don't want neighbours. They really want their piece of the earth, I guess. But then they certainly run a few cattle and a few sheep and a few chooks and that sort of stuff as well. So. And in terms of real estate, mate, it's a very, very hard place to get into because once people go there, they typically don't want to leave. And I was discussing with my brother-in-law just yesterday morning when we were having a coffee on the deck and we were talking about real estate prices as well. They're just in the last 6 months with our real estate boom, Ferguson Valley in the southwest has been booming as well. And you'll have people that'll come along and they've made some money in the last 12 months because their businesses have gone good. They'll go down to Ferguson Valley, have a look at the very limited stock that's available there to buy, and make offers well above market value and well above asking prices. And literally, the opinion or the response of the people that have got these properties is, nah. Because they haven't bought the properties to make money. They bought properties to have this lifestyle that they'd find it hard to replicate anywhere else. So even if they sold their place for $500,000 or $1 million more than what it's probably worth, then what are they going to do? It's a bit of a hard thing to replace. So it's a bit of a hot place and it has its cycles like anywhere else. But it's if you've got your hands on something in there, you don't need to try too hard to hang on to it because it's a hard place not to fall in love with.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll have to test it. I'll have to get down there before other people do, by the sounds of it. Which you're talking about down that region, it is another thing as you know, I've had a fair bit on my plate. And I've actually sold a property of my own that I've been madly trying to get organised. And in between golf tournaments that we sponsored on the weekend. And again, I had to do all the heavy lifting because my partner in crime was living the dream in Ferguson Valley. But no. But it's been really interesting, and I want to try and get. We've got a contact down the southwest, and I want to try and get hold of her and see perhaps that we can get her on board and get a bit of a chat about what's going on. We've done the Midwest and we've done Perth and whatever. So I wouldn't mind trying to get hold of my contact down there and see if she can come on board as a guest in the next week or two. And I also, my intention is to try and get someone. Again, I have a couple of options available to me on board to discuss strata titles, because there's been a number of inquiries. In fact, I've had one today, which I must get back to, with a client who wants to is looking at subdividing some land and or creating strataing some units, and wants to know what the process is. So there's been a bit of interest in that area. So I think that'd be a good topic. And as I say, I've got a couple of guests. And I've also had a lot of inquiry over the weekend because, as you know, Property Avenue WA, Dedicated Property Management and Champion Bay sponsored Friday's event, which was the introduction to the Geraldton Amateur Open at the Geraldton Golf Club on the weekend. There was something like 20 different clubs from around the state that were represented over the weekend at Geraldton Golf Club, which is sensational. Phenomenal. And I think already
in all your time sponsoring the event TV, have you seen that variety? Have you seen that many?
Probably not 20. You know, Country Week, you get a lot of, you know, different clubs from all around, more particularly from the country areas. But there was a lot of city representatives. There was Godsmills. There was the winner was from Joondalup Country Club. There was Mandurah Country Club. There was Meadows Springs, Pinjarra. Where else is there? Kalbarri, Dongra, Sporting Park, of course. There was a couple from Sporting. It was huge. It was Kwinana, of course. Royal Fremantle. So it was 20. Meriden.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was a really it was fantastic, but it was also very interesting that people were coming up and talking and wanting to have a chat about property things. What their opinions were, or the experiences they'd had, or I wish we knew you guys did that. And so there was a really good a good opportunity to talk to people. It was a great opportunity for people to talk to me and chat about their experiences. And that's amazing. I mean, we joke about golf, and that was my weekend. It was a big weekend of golf. But it's a great place. You know, you talk about being out down south and enjoying that leisure. But golf course is also one of those great places to discuss business and certainly property things. It's private, it's personal. And there was a mixture of, you know, there's the social aspect. There were the guys there that were out to win it. And, of course, there were the guys there that were just there because it was a weekend away. And women, I might add. There was women, and it was a joint event, so there's men and women playing. There was over 80. There was nearly 90 people played on Friday.
Wow.
And then there was something like 130 odd that played both days on Saturday and Sunday. So there was over 350 or thereabouts players that played on the golf course over the 3 days. Plus there was a further 60 or 70 on the Thursday. So
that's great numbers.
Few days, and I think you've already had a phone call, haven't you, from a client from the weekend?
Yeah, I have someone that I think, was, I don't know what days they were there, maybe all of the days, but so I've had a phone call from a Geraldtonite who I think at some point in the near future is going to become a Perthonite, and so I was talking to them about the rental market down here and if I've got any opportunities for them. So, mate, it's just getting out there and doing the right thing and helping out people wherever we can. So it's not really much more complicated than that.
No, and it wasn't. And it was the same, like, in the space of, I'd go out to put the banners and that up in the morning, and I had someone said, TV, I've got this place. And I said, you won't believe it. I've had someone ring me wanting to buy a property, a private property, and then this person turns around and says, I want to put my house on the market. You know, can you do that? I said, no, I'm not a real estate agent, but no, I want to do it privately. What do I do? And I gave them a couple of directions. And so there's that sort of conversation that's been going on. And then there was other people that were wanting to buy in Perth or wanting to sell in Perth. and then we're asking opinions, asking for thoughts, asking for direction. So it was quite a productive weekend in that sense. Didn't help my
Excellent.
golf because you get distracted, but it was relaxing because it's a different. You're doing it in a different environment.
Yeah, but you always also told me, we had a very quick chat off air, and you mentioned to me that you didn't hit a bad ball on the weekend. It all sounded like it went pretty straight and in some instances pretty close to the cup. On first goes.
Yep. No, I was certainly happy as to how I was hitting the ball, considering the lack of golf that I've been playing of late.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just lovely to get out there, have a chat with the boys, have a couple of beers, and do some things. And I will say, while I have the opportunity, I think I've got some goodies to bring back when I come back to Perth for you. But I will say, yes, for you. But I will say that my little princess, my wife, what she did with the labelling of the wine bottles, and she organised stubby holders, probably WA stubby holders, and you saw our cap we had on last week. I got one of those for you. She did some pens with our Property Avenue WA on and dedicated property management on. So it was good. It was really, really impressive, and the number of visitors who'd not been there before, they were really impressed, and they were really grateful for the sponsorship as well. Hey, Jo, who was on last week, she had a great weekend in her garden, she tells us.
Oh, excellent!
Yeah,
beauty.
Yeah.
So had a bit of rain though, so she must have got washed out a little bit.
Jo is in Wong Hills.
Oh, no rain.
I don't know, Jo. Did you have any rain? I'll have to ask her.
And just whilst we're getting that answer, we do really need to acknowledge Mrs. Viner, because, mate, I know that you do plenty of heavy lifting. In fact, just about all of it, so far as the show is concerned. But there's stuff that you just can't get to, and there's stuff that I never get to that we know that Jude does get to. So I just wanted to acknowledge the efforts and the time and the commitment of Jude, and a lot of that behind the scenes stuff wouldn't come together without her efforts. So thank you, Mrs. Viner.
Hey, Jo said Joanne had no rain there at Wongan on the weekend.
Wow.
But we're going in July. There's a group of us that go to Wongan, and I've missed out the last couple of years for my little falls and
faked injury.
Yeah. So that's in July. So I reckon you should get organised, and you should come with us for the weekend in July in Wongan. It's great fun, and the hospitality is sensational. The food is glorious, and it's not about the golf.
Weekend in July, or towards the end of July, is it?
I'll tell you when it is.
Okay.
Tell you when it is. Okay, let's go to the next stage. Oscar's stats. What was the story?
Okay, well, TV, just for the last fortnight, as you know, we have been talking about both markets, both the rental market, but more so the sales market, seems to be slowing up a bit. And slowing up might sound a little bit harsh, but that's the reality. And certainly I'm in touch with many agents and many offices, week in, week out, with the nature of my work. And certainly what we saw over the course of May was a slowdown in contrast to the 4 previous months of this year. Not a slow market though. We're not saying that things are slow, but slowing down from that crazy fear of missing out vibe that we've had all year, and in fact the latter part of last year as well. So that's actually a welcome slowdown. It's what really needed to happen, because otherwise, we'd go back to crazy time, what we experienced prior to the GFC, where we had exponential growth and levels of activity that really were unhealthy. And far out, we found out about it in 2008 and 2009 when the GFC really took a grip. So we've slowed up a little bit. But again, it means that instead of having 30 or 40 people through a home open, it means we're now back to 8 to 10 or 8 to 15, which is much more manageable. The statistics themselves, I would have thought that they'd show a little bit more than what they do so far. So I have got the stats here, and they are in line with what I'm saying, but again, I thought they'd be a bit more severe. So we've seen sales activity just in the last 7 days to the weekend. Sales activity has dropped by about 5%, or rather between 4 and 5%. That's 952 sales, which is, for the last couple of months, we've seen just over 1,000 sales each week. So now we're down to 952 sales, and 12 months ago in the same week, we were at 552, and that, if you remember, we'd just come out of the first that first initial COVID shock, and our real estate market started to recover. So and we sprung straight up to 800 to 1,000 sales, and then we exceeded the 1,000 sales a week mark. So we're down a little bit in terms of volume. Probably the most significant statistic in the sales market, though, is the increase in listings that we've got. So I would say that we're up between 9 and 10% on our listings, and that by and large, I think, when you have a greater supply of properties available for sale, that buyer missing out on the only one that's going to suit them, that starts to fade a little bit, because they know that even if they do miss out, there is an alternative, or maybe a few alternatives for them. So it's good to see that we have got a slight increase in supply. It's also pretty typical of this time of the year as well. We're now into the winter months, so most agents...
I was just going to ask that question.
Yeah, most agents would expect that we slow up a little bit because people literally just stay indoors and they rug up, and they don't get out house hunting all that much through the winter, wetter periods. That said, there's nothing more energetic, I guess, than the spring selling season, and we know that comes straight after winter. So even if we do back it off a little bit over the next 2 or 3 months, the market cycle aside, we would expect that the spring selling season, especially on the back of what we've had for the last 12 months, will absolutely kick off with a bang. And we're probably going to see that level of transaction activity skyrocket again. So no huge surprises there in the sales market, but a slight reduction in the number of transactions, and a worthwhile increase in the supply of listings. Rentals are probably pretty stable, and that is, our vacancy rate is still bang on just above 1%. In fact, I think it sits now between 1 and 1.1%, so it's still very, very tight. We've probably seen a bit of an increase again in the listings available, or the properties available for rent, but only marginally. I think right now we've got a listing supply of 2,815 properties. We've seen it go as low as just over 2,600, which is when our vacancy rate falls below 1%. So we're sitting there just on the cusp of that 1% mark. But certainly, my discussion with property managers, and also the properties that I'm leasing myself, I'm definitely finding that crazy FOMO that we were seeing in the rental market, that seems to have died off a little bit as well. Maybe not as much as in the sales market, but it's died off a little bit as well. So, and we always check in with the Geraldton market to see how the rental market's going in Geraldton. Last week, I think, was 42 properties available in Geraldton, and this week it's 47 properties available in Geraldton. So not big numbers, very, very low for the whole of Geraldton, but still, you look at 42 to 47 and it's only 5 properties, but it probably represents 6 or 7%. A 6 or 7% increase. So we'll wait and see where that one finishes up next week. That's pretty much it from me, TV.
Mate, can I just interrupt for a second? How does that compare with other major regional areas like your Kalgoorlies and your Bunburys and your Bustletons? Where are they? How do they compare?
Everywhere but the northwest is very, very consistent with what I've said, and that being that, and I've looked into the markets through the goldfields, and then I've also looked into the southwest as well. So that crazy sting, and the Midwest as well, that crazy sting that we've had, that we saw for the first 1/3 of the year, that has come off a little bit, and then we've seen a slight increase in listings as well. So The trends, I guess, that I've just quoted happening in the Perth market are definitely what's happening in the Midwest, the Southwest, and then also the Goldfields region as well. The Northwest, though, is a different kettle of fish, TV. That is so much more fueled by and related to what's going on in our mining sector. And when we've got a very, very busy mining sector, which we absolutely do, that largely impacts the demand, for housing. We're just going through a bit of a mining boom up there at the moment, and because of that, the demand for housing and the housing of workers and their families is very, very high, and that just means that companies are either renting properties and placing a further demand or further pressure on rentals, and often if they're unable to rent properties, in some cases they'll just go ahead and buy the properties and then house their workers in there. So but overall the Northwest is a little bit of a different beast than the rest of the state.
Yep. It's really interesting because when you talk to people, and certainly on the weekend, it's just really intriguing that people had no idea how low the market is when it comes to the rental side. But it was also intriguing that people were aware of how tough some people are doing it. And as you say, like this, the rental market's 1.1%, but it's not as chaotic as it was. And yet you still hear some pretty ugly stories of people that are struggling.
Yeah.
And when you read the articles that are going on about, and I know I've made mention about this more than the odd occasion of different episodes, but now you're hearing about the construction industry struggling with getting their supplies, getting the materials. What's that going to do? We go through the winter months where the weather obviously will impact on things. So you get further delays because they can't get their materials on board. What's that going to do to the rental market?
Look, it's a really good question, TV. I mean, there's the construction sector and the supply constraints of materials that you just mentioned. But then on the plus side, there's and I'm sure we're going to get to it tonight, but there's the increase in investor interest in properties, in the state. So that's good in terms of providing an additional supply of rental properties. But back to your original question, so far as the shortage in supplies, that's the last thing that we need. We need that like a hole in the head. We absolutely, as an economy, we could have anticipated that we would have had a shortage of supplies because 12 months ago, and between 9 and 12 months ago, the government came out with great stimuluses to stimulate the construction industry, and that was received really, really well by the intended general public. And land sales went through the roof, building contracts went through the roof, and builders booked work for anywhere between 18 and 24 months. So it was inevitable that there was going to be some sort of a supply shortage. But what we didn't factor in, though, is those natural disasters, which really don't get enough media attention these days, and that is Cyclone Seroja that ripped through the Midwest, and then we also had almost 100 homes destroyed in the Wooroloo fires earlier in the year as well. So but yeah, what's it going to do to the rental market? I guess on one hand, for those properties that were to be constructed that were going to become rental properties and therefore increase the supply, I guess that places a further pressure on our already very tight rental market. So again, we need that like a hole in the head, but it doesn't eradicate it. It just means that it's going to be further delayed, and I'd suggest maybe between 3 and 6 months. But the good news, and we'll probably segue into this, I think, is we are seeing a resurgence in investor interest in the WA property market to much better numbers than where we were at 12 months ago, which is really good to see. And the good news there is that we've got people that are wanting to buy properties in WA solely for investment, which means that therefore they're going to buy those properties and look for tenants, and that increases the supply of rental housing. So maybe that's a bit of a silver lining.
Is it the right time? If you're looking to invest, would you consider it the right time to buy? I mean, what are your thoughts with regard to the timing of buying investment property at the moment?
I've never seen it better. Like, honestly, literally have never ever seen it better. And my career in real estate is 2.5 decades or thereabouts, and I've never ever seen it as good as what it is. It's a lot to do with the real estate market and the cycles of the real estate market, which is obviously all about demand and supply. That largely relates to the pricing, like what's your entry level pricing, but then it also relates to your rental return and what are the rental market conditions. So we're pretty good at working out where the sales market is at and the median house price together with the rental market. But the big one that we've got in here at the moment, TV, that we haven't had in most other property cycles is the ridiculously low interest rates. Like it's phenomenal that where those interest rates are, and that's something that we haven't seen as the third factor for a really good property investment. So it probably surprises me that our investment market isn't further along than where it currently is. But is it a great time to buy and invest in WA? No question, it absolutely is. And yeah, for all the right reasons. The only way you could have done it any better, I guess, was to pick the absolute bottom of the market. And I dare say that might have been around about 12 months ago or 9 to 12 months ago, because we know that the market's increased since then. That said, you would have been a pretty big punter to pick it 9 or 12 months ago, because we had just come out of this COVID period for the first time, and no one really knew where our market would go and where our economy would go in this post-COVID period, and we've learnt along the way. So, but if you had picked it 9 or 12 months ago, that's the only way you could have done better than what you would do today.
That being said, there is still no shortage of commentary and statistical evidence to support the fact that it's still very affordable. Forget about interest rates, what we're paying for a property at the present time. And I know I asked you a couple of episodes ago whether we thought it was, I'd observed where it was being suggested we hadn't got to the 214 levels. And I think I've since seen documentary evidence to suggest that is still the case. So although we say, well, you know, you could perhaps pick the market 9 months ago, 12 months ago, the real fact is that this is still very affordable when it comes to values. When you consider what you pick up I'm forever going through the headlines of different states and different countries and seeing what people are buying and the amount of money they're spending. And you look at WA and you think, oh my God. Okay, there are pockets where you're spending big bucks. But even in the context of that, in comparison to what people are doing on the East Coast, for example, it is very, very affordable in WA.
Yeah. And look, I mean, I 100% agree with you, TV. And I even it's all relative, though, because you see what Sydney prices are, and their median is more than double what our median is. And for that median of 1.1 million or whatever they've got over there, you don't even get the property that our $511,000 median would buy. Like, you get so much more for $511,000 in Perth than you would for 1.1 million in Sydney in terms of the actual physical size of the real estate. But there's a reason why people are paying prices over there, and again, it typically comes back to demand and supply. But over there, you don't get as much real estate for your money. But similarly, I remember when I first moved to Geraldton, which is now about 12 years ago, I think, when I actually first got there, and I looked at what's on offer in Geraldton. What?
I found a photo the other day. I must get it out. I found a photo of you. I reckon it must have been the first year you were in town. It was on the golf course as well. I've got to find it. I'll check it. I found it the other day.
Was I with you?
Going. No, of you.
Yeah, but was I with you on the golf
Yes.
course?
Yes.
Right. Okay. But
Well, how else do you think I was going to get the photo?
I don't know. I don't know. Maybe someone else took a photo of me on the golf course and gave it to you. I don't know.
Go on, keep going. Sorry.
But yeah, I got to Geraldton, and even right now, I still look at the prices that you pay in Geraldton, whether you're after an 800 square metre block, which is very close to the beach, or whether you're going to be back off the coast a little bit and you want a couple of hectares or a few acres or something. The price of Geraldton real estate, as Henry Van Thiel from Ray White Geraldton has mentioned before, far out, it's such good value for money, and you get so much more for your 500 or 511,000 in Geraldton than you do for your 511,000 here in Perth as well. So it's all relative. It's demand and supply. It's the size of the economy. It's the population, the availability of employment, all those things. No. Overall, WA, very, very good bang for your buck.
I think I suppose when people ask me the question about investment thinking, I made the point is that you identify if you're going to buy outside because of depending on what you can afford, and then you decide you're going to invest in regional areas, then you need to entertain and consider not just the good times but the bad times. And so therefore it's always been my sort of suggestion to people when they ask me the question, so to consider things like industry and what are the industries in the areas that you're entertaining to invest in. Because sometimes, like as you mentioned earlier on, I'll use Ferguson Valley because that's where you went to for your weekend. But, the fact of someone going there to buy an investment property down there, that may not be the ideal investment game plan. Whereas you went to a location, for example, like Geraldton, where farming, fishing, and there's variety, and mining, and there's variety of other industries that will sort of support in the good times and the bad times, support the rental market still. You might, your rental return might be a little bit lower when the market drops a bit, but there's probably good opportunity to have, if you're in the right location and got the right property, that property will give you a good return, both in a rental sense when it comes to income and at the same time a capital gain. But there are other areas that may not be the case because in some localities are great when tourism is going well and people buy a rental property for investment. But all of a sudden, when the market slows down like it did in WA for the last 4 or 5 years, suddenly that investment property, tourism, and everyone's struggling for $1, suddenly that enthusiasm going to a regional area for holiday on a regular basis stops.
TV, I won't even try and reiterate what you just said and using Ferguson Valley as an example, because I think you hit the nail absolutely on the head. Look, the key to any good real estate investment always is you've got to look at your capital growth. What do you anticipate your capital growth will be? And then you've got to have a very good idea of the rental market as well, because that's going to help you service any debt or the mortgage on the property, and that's where the interest rates come into it as well. The reason why there's been, over the last couple of years, we've got to the point where we have with our rental market here in WA is lots of people that have got burnt with holding their investment property over the last 6 to 7 years have got to that point where now the market's recovered a little bit, and because they've been burnt, because the properties haven't gone up in value, it's probably cost them more than it has for them than it's actually earned them. They've had enough. They basically simply have had enough and said, I just want our market and our investment to recover just a little bit. Let's just quit it, get it gone, and let's just close that chapter basically of our life. So they made the decision that they've had enough, number one, but then also if they could see that over the next 5 years or over the next 3 years, they could anticipate that they're still going to get another 10% growth per annum out of the property, then maybe that would actually change their mind. So the key is not just to only look at your interest rates and not to only look at your rental return, but you've got to have some idea of your expected level of capital growth. Because if you don't, and then all you're doing is having you're in a good rental market and that services the mortgage and pays the rates and all that. But if your property is not actually going up in value over time and you can't predict or rather anticipate where it might go, there's almost no point you having it in the first place, because the idea of having an investment property normally is because that's going to be some form of a wealth creation opportunity for you. So and that's where a lot of investors, because the last 5 or 6 years it hasn't done what it was supposed to do for them, they've gotten to this point and said, bugger it, if we can get our money back now, let's hit it and quit it and go. And that's also placed a very a tightening pressure on our rental market, because there's just not the supply there anymore.
Just moving on, there was an article in I get a newsletter from the Urban Developer, and it made reference to the article was home building at breaking point, and their reference was that the construction boom is obviously an important factor across the country, but it's also affecting key development projects across the country.
Yeah.
And of course, as it is with the residential market, being the critical shortage of building materials. But they made a really good point that I found really interesting. They said that because of the policies that were established, it sort of was done very swiftly, and then it created this surge in the building market, the building activity, and it then forced the developers to act swiftly. However, they came without proper foresight about the implications and consequences leading to the current construction supply shortages. And I thought it was a really good point, because great to get all this enthusiasm going and this activity going, but I know several people that are nowhere near having their house built. And then, of course, you get that massive failure recently of
Pindan.
That's going to put more pressure on the building industry, more pressure on projects that are in line. And of course, there was an article the other day that I read about Bunnings, where they were just really concerned that their shelves were empty of timber, in particular, and a variety of building materials. So massive impact. And then Warren Taylor from Warren Taylor Homes here made mention about the increases in materials. Well, with this supply and demand, surely that's going to put further pressure on prices, which is going to put further pressure on the building industry.
Yeah, absolutely, TV. Again, mate, you're nailing everything that you've got to say tonight.
See what happens when you play golf?
Yeah, you can't read our disclaimer without stuttering, but you're getting everything else right. But and then a further pressure, obviously, on the building industry is to do with the skills shortage, and that's because at the same time that we've got that very mini building boom going on, solely as a result of the government incentives, we've also got a mining boom going on with our iron ore price going north of $200 a ton, and you've got these tradies that are very, very hard workers and often motivated by money, and they're looking at how much money they can lay bricks or labouring on site versus going and doing the FIFO lifestyle, work 7 or 8 months of the year and earn more money whilst having more holidays. So there's pressures all round. And look, from the government's point of view, it's a little bit damned if you do, damned if you don't, because COVID was a no one had experienced this before, and initially it was a really, really good thing what they had gone and done. Could they have had the foresight for every single thing that could, for the pressures that you just mentioned now? Maybe they could have, but if they hadn't have done anything, then our whole economy would be a far different place, so far as the construction industry is concerned as well. So we've got to take a little bit of the bad that with the main bits of the good that come with it. That all said, so far as housing is concerned, we need the government to get around the table and have the conversations with the private sector, because still over the next 6 months, I still think that it's probably going to get a bit harder or a bit worse before it gets better. So far as the shortage of housing supply is concerned.
The interesting as well that in this article that I read, they talked about the shortage of materials, but also, which you do forget about sometimes, it was the short supply of structural pine was due to significant pine forest wiped out from the bushfires in 2019, 2020.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. So
Yeah,
there's another
okay.
issue, the flow-on effect of what that's now impacting on this demand because of the industry that's going through the roof.
Not only
Don't mind the
that,
pun on roof.
yeah. Not only that, though, I think Squizzy Taylor mentioned it to us as well. But because of what's going on in the demand for the housing, and the builders have got all these contracts and they've got to deliver on these contracts in the time that they said, otherwise, they themselves are going to be up for higher costs and penalties. And then you've got the likes of Bunnings and other hardware suppliers or material suppliers that are now running low on or running out of stock. It's the great toilet paper crisis of April 2020, basically, and that is when people are sitting there going, "Oh my God, we're running out, we're running low, or whatever." What does everyone go and do? Like all the builders and all the trades get out there and buy extra of things. We all know that we didn't need all that toilet paper straight away, but still, and even with every consecutive lockdown, as soon as the lockdown gets announced, people are in the cars on their way to the shops to clear the toilet paper aisles. So that's very much what's happening in the building supply industry as well. It's that whole fear of missing out. Whether or not you need it right now, well, that comes second to the fact that we just don't want to have that fear of missing out. And that's certainly something that the building industry is faced with right now.
And the reference is that similar construction supply shortages are being reported across both the United States and the UK, where shortages extend to building other materials, including cement and paint. So it's a worldwide thing, that's the thing.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, I didn't want to make it a big, long show tonight. I thought we'd just touch on a few points, mention a few things, but I will mention, I reckon there's something that you made a point. I made reference to the Shittiest Town Award, and I heard you picked up on something.
I did, mate. I heard it on the news this morning that not only, in addition to the shittiest town, I don't know if it's the same group, but now they've gone and done a survey and rating of the shittiest suburb in Perth. Could you believe? Far out.
And do you know who won?
I'm going to test my memory, but was it Balga? No, Armidale. Yep. Yeah, I think Armidale was in there, Fremantle was in there, I think Balga was in there.
Inaloo? Get it? Inaloo? Shitty?
You're so funny. Yeah, no, I think they had the top five as well. But and then on the radio show that I heard this, they asked for everyone who, because most suburbs have got a bit of an ugly area or an ugly spot or a dodgy spot in them. So they had everyone ringing up, dobbing in their own suburbs, as to, what were the problem areas and how many visits from the TRG over the course of a month and all that sort of stuff. So Rockingham got mentioned a few times too.
I think it's very much. I think it's very, very much tongue in cheek, but anyway. It's all worthwhile. Hey, there was an article I read too about home buyers frustrated at calls for blind bids, as though as Australian house prices soar. I think that was more an eastern states thing than anything, but people were going in and putting in bids prior to an auction, and we're not giving any indication of what the prices were like. So that was the story. There was I know you like this. What you need to know about cryptocurrency and how to get started in investing in property.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of crypto. Yeah, I know a lot about it too.
South Perth is on the up.
Oh,
The
what?
median house
Literally
price
on
breaks
the.
through record. The median house price breaks through the record barrier. South Perth's
Ah,
median house price has smashed through the record barrier, breaking net levels not seen since 2014. See what I mean?
ah, yeah, yeah. I thought you
It
meant
hit an
on the
all.
up, as in more apartments are on the up in
One,
South
yeah,
Perth.
no, the median price has gone. Has hit a high of 1.35,
Wow,
which is it is 13% above what it was 7 years ago.
13% above what it was 7 years ago. Right, okay. Go
So
South Perth.
what 1.2 mil it was back 7 years ago. It's now 1.35.
Yeah, right.
But they are saying the overall Perth median is down 8.2%.
Compared to 2014.
Yep,
Really?
that doesn't make
8.2%?
sense. I need
I
to
would
check
have
that
thought
out.
so.
I haven't looked into that. This is just headline stuff that I picked up on.
Right, okay.
Um, what else did I find? There was another good article I found. Anyway, we'll keep to that. Have you got anything else you want to raise before we finish up for the day? And we do
No,
F questions?
I just looked at the time for our short show, and right now it's just gone 56 minutes. So,
That's okay. That's better than what we normally do. Okay, my F question. You ready? I must
hit me.
admit, I'm looking forward to listening to the podcast tomorrow when it's uploaded because your sound is just beautiful.
Good.
What is it? What sort of mic have you got?
It is a hyper something.
Doesn't matter.
Oh, it's called a hyper solo cast.
Okay.
Thanks to my good friends at JB Hi-Fi, highly recommended to me.
Okay. Good-o. Righto. Are you ready?
Yeah,
The
hit me.
question. If you were the emperor of a little island, okay?
Which I am.
Yeah. And you could pick, I want you to pick any four people, could be current, could be from history, could be anybody, not including your wife because she's the empress. She's already on the island with you. To come and live on the island for the next few years, who would you pick?
So any four people.
Any four.
Okay. So 4 people. Far out. Okay, so
Okay, well, tell me 3 then, if that makes you feel better.
no, Richard Branson. I reckon I'd pick Richard Branson because I think he'd be a very exciting character, and he's a bit of a daredevil, and he's got many stories to tell. So I'd pick Richard Branson. I would pick. Can't be my wife. Who else? I don't know. Probably one of my best mates that I just don't get to see as much of anymore because we're both working too hard. So I'd say a best mate as well. I'd bring him. And my third person, now that we've scaled it
What if I
down
couldn't
to
make
3,
it?
I'd just try and get a close second. TV. Far out. But someone, my third person that I would bring would be Judy Viner.
Would you?
I'd take Judy Viner because I would sit down and try and work out day in, day out how the hell she's put up with you for so many years, mate. And I know that she wouldn't be able to tell me that in a day. It would take a long time, and so I think I'd bring her along for a few years.
Well, not only that, she's a damn good cook. She did some. You ought to see the towel she embroidered for prizes for the weekend for the golf, mate.
Yeah.
She's unbelievable. It's like hitting a gold mine.
Who would your 4 be, mate?
Well, I'm doing Roger Federer because I just think he's just someone that I've just been idolised what he's about.
Yeah.
The Dalai Lama.
Oh yeah.
I'm right into some of his beliefs and some of the stuff that they go in. I think not so much the belief, but the philosophies. I think a lot of that stuff is day-to-day stuff that I sort of try to follow to a point.
Yep.
The other person, this will really tickle your fancy, but the other person that I would love, I reckon, to have some time with would be the Queen. She is someone, the Queen.
Mate,
Don't-
she wouldn't have much to say.
I reckon that would be just a great conversation to actually imagine sitting down and having a chat to her. That would be sensational.
Mate, I'd take my list any day.
Oh, no. That's only 3. I haven't finished yet.
Hurry up.
Okay, I'll stop there then. That's my 3. You did 3, I'll do 3.
Okay, cool.
I've got a couple others, but there you go. Hey, listen, it was a pretty casual sort of podcast tonight, but I think we covered a few pointers and gave some thoughts about a few things that are going on around the traps. And certainly, as we keep on saying to people, by all means, you can get access to us via a live stream every Tuesday. Our podcast becomes available every Wednesday. You can do that through Budsprout, or you can go to the various other avenues of which you listen to your podcast. I spoke to a few guys on the weekend and made mention and gave them out some pens and stubby holders and told them about our podcast. So we might have a few listeners from now on.
Really?
Yeah, we're trying to get it up. I mean, I know we've been a bit casual with our marketing, but that's okay. We'll get there. Episode 56, we've survived.
Yeah.
But for those that want to send us some questions, you can always do that each week. You can send us an email. You can contact us via our Facebook page or Instagram. And any other way that you want to contact us, by all means, you're welcome to. And if we can help you, then that's what it's all about. And if you've got some suggestions, we'd love to hear them. Send them through. If you've got a particular topic you want to do, or you've got some questions you want to ask, send them through. You don't have to send them live. You can send them through during the week, like a lot of people do. And we will look forward to discovering the answers to those. Hang on, there's someone just sent through a comment. Joe said, thanks, guys. Helpful and interesting.
Anytime, Joe. Look forward
You're
to
always
some
welcome,
feedback
Joe.
from you,
And
mate.
Joe, I'm going to try and convince him to come to Wongan for the golf in July. Can't wait. Okay, mate, we've got to go. Been a fabulous week. Look forward to seeing you when I get back down to Perth, and we might have a toasted sandwich somewhere at some stage.
Sounds great, TV. Good to see you, and thanks for having me, mate. Thanks for listening.
Pleasure. Take care. See you all. And please, for those that are travelling or doing whatever you're doing, please stay safe. Have a great week and look forward to seeing you all next week. Take care.